Okay, so we're back here with our old graph from our previous run, and the question was, what things could we do um, to slow this and keep this um, from causing more problems. And sort of standard things are we try reducing physical contacts. Quarantining is one way we do that. Um, of late with Ebola, they've tried to reduce the catch rate by giving antiretrovirals and things that might stop it. That seems to be working better, and WHO, World Health Organization of the United Nations, is quite in love with that in the DRC. Um, but we're not sure if it actually worked. Again, these things die off rather quickly. Did our death rates go down? Did we end up with greater survivorships and things like that? We could complicate the models, but we're going to run it again and just play with what could we do to make this better in areas. Well, we could actually increase the death rate, which people don't like to think about, but it is one thing that is a traditional method in rural systems where if you increase it too much, then you see it jumps up to about 100, and then nobody dies after that because everybody's dead, the infecteds go away. So it is one of the things that people have done. People who are seen to be infected in villages get hacked to death, their houses get burned, blah, 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 blah. That's sort of inhumane. We don't like it. We think it's not a good public health. But it is a solution that has been done, and it is one of the traditional solutions. A rather macabre one, and like I said, we don't really want to be there, so let's bounce back to a more standard. One of the things people also have done and made mistakes, which is where they try to reduce the death rate, right, and to something very, very low, but allow the people in society, so the contact rate goes up. You can't take that up very much before our model goes wonky. But you end up with these huge spikes. If the death rate is down, the contact rate goes up. You end up with these weird models of that. We're going to stop the simulation and restart it so we can reset it back to we could have reset it, but back to our initial model. I tend to stop and restart. So the catch rate, we typically what we've done is we send in a whole bunch of medical personnel to hire people, and then everybody puts on suits, so our catch rate comes down a little bit. And it surprises people when you lower the catch rate that the actual overall deaths still goes up because we keep our physical contacts high, and if we make our physical contacts any higher, we end up with, again, our crazy model. So we're going to stop this, and part of the problem is our physical contacts has to be pretty small, otherwise, since it's contacts per person per exposed. So we're going to go back into our equation editor here, and we're going to make that really small so we can play with it. We're going to make our increment 0.0. We're going to do our max of 0.01, and our increment's going to be 0.1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So it'll be really, really small, and we're going to say OK, so our model doesn't explode on us when we're messing with it. So you see our physical contacts there. Now it's so small that the exposed just die off because, and they're removed slowly. All of those that are there just die over time because of the death rate. But we see our susceptibles grow because we have a birth rate and it's growing. But so this allows us now, since we made it smaller, to play with our birth rate, our physical contacts. And we see as we bring that up that we end up with sort of our increasing deaths over time. And like I said, we want to take our catch rate down by public health activities, but our physical contact rate goes up. And we see that we can end up with fairly different results. But this is how we model these things and ask ourselves whether it was worth the effort and what it costs. And these are the SER models, these disease models. are how we start. They're often modestly accurate, but they give us an idea of what we can do in terms of interventions and what the likely costs are of increasing physical contacts. We send in Medicine Sans Borders, Doctors Without Borders, lots of people in to help, and those people bring it back home, and every year 2 or 3 of them die, and there's a big scare that it's going to spread in the population, but it really does take a lot of physical contact and sort of repeated exposures to do that. And one of the reasons we know that are these models. So the disease models aren't particularly upset, but the roommate who dies sort of is upset that they came back and that we didn't quarantine. But it's the struggle of disease management, is how much do you quarantine, how much do you treat, etc. And while this seems really cold-hearted, you have to think about these 3,000 people here who don't have it, or in the case, the 50 or 140,000 who end up sick or damaged or permanent liver damage, or all the other horrible things that go along with this disease. So you don't, the infected, you really do care about this 50 people here that once you find them, but you don't want it to go, in here it only grows to 500 and then slowly dies out. You see the exposed comes up, it flattens out, and if we ran this for a longer period of time, this is the sort of standard that we end up with Ebola, is that we do see periods where the infection goes up, it ends up being removed, and slowly we manage to fix these things. So if we push the CATS rate up to a higher rate, which is really closer to what we see in Ebola, we see the exposed go way up and peak, we see the infected go way up and peak, and then we see it die off fairly quickly in local areas. We really don't want this peak. We'd rather just flatten it out and slowly get rid of it.